Hi, my name is Larry Jordan, and welcome to this Power Up webinar on unlocking the power of 3D in motion. You know, 3D is one of the more confusing subjects that we can get our arms around because it's like nothing we've ever worked with inside Final Cut or any other editing system, and it's different, actually, from real life, and it's very, very easy to get completely disoriented and just give up in disgust and say, you know, I'm just not smart enough to handle this. But the neat thing is motion makes 3D completely accessible if you take it in small steps, and that's what we're going to do today. Is I'm not going to teach you everything you need to know about 3D. I want to get you introduced to 3D so you can then go on and explore on your own and explore and discover all kinds of wonderful new features and power that Motion 3 and Motion 4 provide. This session assumes that you have a basic understanding of how to use motion. If you're new to motion or you're not clear on how the interface works, then I suggest that you view our webinar number 18, which is Mastering Motion. This introduces you to the idea of the interface, how to create projects, and how to do basic tasks inside motion. It's designed for people that are really unfamiliar with the application. I won't have time to talk about the interface or setting up projects at all today. There's just too much other stuff to cover. I've wrestled with this whole subject of 3D and teaching 3D and working with motion for Final Cut editors for a long while, trying to decide whether I should emphasize how to create beautiful things or show you how everything works. And after teaching this to a number of students and thinking about it for a long time, I've decided that for this introduction, I'm going to focus on showing you how stuff works. So my goal is to give you a clear understanding of how to work in 3D in motion, and we'll save creating fantastic art for another session. My goals for today are to explain what motion means by 3D, because it's not what we would normally expect it to mean. I'll show you how to switch between 2D and 3D, show you a simple way to create a 3D look, how to animate movement, how to add text and animate that text, how to add and animate a camera, how to work with particles, and how to add a light and create a reflection. When we talk about 3D inside motion, we're actually really talking about something called 2.5D, because motion displays 2D objects in 3D space. Now, imagine a sheet of paper. If I hold up a sheet of paper, you see this sheet of paper, and I can draw an object on here and put a drop shadow behind it, and I give it the illusion of being three-dimensional, but it really isn't. As we move around in 3D, as that paper turns, notice when we look at the paper on edge, it's infinitely thin. And that's because, although it looks like it's 3D, we're really faking it. That's exactly what motion does. Video is only wide by high and infinitely thin, so as we move around video, we're not able to see actual depth. The depth comes not in the objects, but in how we view the objects. It's not the objects that become three-dimensional. It's our perspective that's three-dimensional. Think of our eyes as a set of cameras. Our eyes are moving in 3D space, looking at a variety of, say, photographs hung on the wall. This means that video, text, and other elements are displayed as 2D or flat art, but viewed within a three-dimensional world. Only particles which are created as part of motion are displayed as dimensional objects. And even that is not completely true, and I'll give you an illustration of that a little bit later in this presentation. Also, a note on depth. When you're in 2D space, the stacking order of elements in the layers pane determines what is foreground and what is background. You know how in Final Cut, something on a lower layer is in the background and something on a higher layer is in the foreground. Or in Photoshop, something which is on a lower layer in the layers palette is background, something higher up is foreground. Same thing in motion. In the layers pane, that which is lower is background, that which is higher is foreground. That's true in 2D. It is not true in 3D. In 3D space, the position of an element in depth is determined not by its stacking order in the layer pane, but on its position in Z space. X space is horizontal. Y space is vertical. Z space is depth. And so we can set the Z position, the depth position of an object, irrespective of where it is inside the layers pane. Under the hood, though it's hidden most of the time, motion is always calculating all of its effects in 3D space. This means that even when you're working in 2D, motion is calculating in 3D.